Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you will learn to master the business of yoga with guests from around the world who have experienced becoming successful yoga teachers, studio owners, and much more. Now, here's your host, Amanda Kingsmith.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the MBOM podcast. I'm so grateful that you've decided to join me today for this episode. This episode of the podcast is brought to you in part by Offering Tree. When you're a yoga teacher and you're trying to build your digital presence, it can be daunting. First, you might need a website. There are a lot of great tools for building websites like WordPress, Wix, and Squarespace. Then you need a way to email your students. Again, there are tools for that, like MailChimp and Constant Contact, but that's another account to pay for and a password to remember. Then you need a way to schedule and register your students. Again, there are tools for that, but it's another account to create and pay for and another password to remember. Oh wait, how do I integrate my scheduling tool with my website? If you're going crazy, I totally get that. So instead of putting all of this stuff off for another day because it's too daunting, let me tell you about a better way. Offering Tree set out to make creating your digital presence fun, easy, and affordable. With one account, you can create a website in minutes that has your schedule built right in. They also have email marketing tools to collect email addresses, send newsletters, and automated emails to your subscribers. It all works seamlessly together with one account and one subscription. To learn more about what Offering Tree can do for your digital presence, visit offeringtree.com/MBOM. Offering Tree has been supporting MBOM for over a year now, and I not only love the product and service that they've created, but I also love the people. I'm a big fan of supporting small businesses because I'm a small business myself. Small businesses supporting other small businesses is probably one of my favorite things ever, and it's really cool when I get to hop on a partner meeting and I get to talk with the co-founders of this product. As well, Offering Tree is providing special pricing for MBOM listeners. So be sure to head over and visit offeringtree.com/MBOM to receive your discount. Once again, offeringtree.com/MBOM. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you in part by FavYogis. The FavYogis app is back with new features for teachers that let you create and manage your own private classes while making payment and registration a breeze. Do you have regular private clients? Make life easier with autopay. Forget about remembering to Venmo, or if you're Canadian, try some sort of e-transfer or PayPal combination. You can use autopay to enable repeat payments and keep calendars in sync with classes. Google Calendar integration automatically updates teachers and student classes when you make changes. It's still just your yoga. Teachers add classes, students add teachers, and teachers and students stay connected. So head on over to the App Store on your device and find FavYogis. It's FavYogis. On top of that, it's totally free to download and give a try. So head on over to your App Store and find FavYogis. FavYogis. Oh, and make sure you use code MBOM and let them know that I sent you. Today on the podcast, I am super excited to be joined by Tess Ball. Tess is a yoga teacher, and she's also the founder of the Heart-Driven Business Academy. And on this episode of the show, Tess and I dive into her story, how she got into yoga, what inspired her to become a yoga teacher, what inspired her to create a yoga studio out of her home, and then where she's at with her current career after a move and having to shut down her studio. We also talk about her business, Heart-Driven Business Academy, and she talks about top things that as yoga entrepreneurs, we really need to know for setting up and starting a heart-driven business. So this is a really fun and inspiring episode, and I hope that you guys enjoy hearing from Tess as much as I enjoyed chatting with her. Before we dive into the episode, I just wanted to talk quickly about the private Facebook community. It's called Yoga Business Badasses, and just like I said, you can find it on Facebook. So if you just search it in the search bar, answer the questions and I'll let you on in. And one of the reasons I'm really excited to be sharing about the Facebook group right now is that every week for the last couple of weeks, I've been doing a live video on Wednesdays to talk with you guys about the podcast episode. So it's a couple days after the podcast, so it gives you a chance to listen to the episode if you want to participate in the conversation. And it's also a great way to get kind of like the Cole's Notes version of the episode and hear my biggest learnings and takeaways from the episodes. So if you'd like to be a part of that, I would love to have you there. Once again, it's Yoga Business Badasses on Facebook. All right, now on to the episode. Without further ado, here is Tess. Tess, welcome to the podcast today. I'm super excited to have you here with me.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I am so excited and honored to be on this side of the podcast. I've been a longtime listener, and so it's a real treat to come on and have a conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm super, super excited for our conversation. But firstly, where are you joining me from today?
I am in Bend, Oregon.
Oh, cool. I've driven through there before. I think I got some kombucha from there.
Probably. There is a lot of kombucha in Bend, Oregon.
Yeah. You guys are strong with the kombucha game for sure. But yeah, I'm from Western Canada, as you probably know. So I love the Pacific Northwest.
I never thought that the journey would take me over here. I come from the east half of the United States, and it's been really nice coming to what feels like home. I love the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, amazing. I love hearing things like that. And so can you tell me a little bit about your yoga story? Like, when did you start practicing yoga? What got you excited about yoga and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So I was in corporate advertising for many years, started that in Tennessee, moved to New York, and I was doing the climbing the ranks of the advertising scene in New York City for a few years. And my art director asked if I wanted to go to the gym with him as part of a New Year's resolution. And at that point, I was like, I should try something new. I had been grinding for 80-hour days, day in, day out, and needed to mix things up. And I was like, you know what? A New Year's resolution, why not? And as the story unfolds, like many stories unfold, I took a yoga class at that gym and took a deep breath for the first time in my life. And I was like, oh, this is powerful. I thought maybe I'd, get some good stretching in, but really what I experienced in that class was enough to give me pause, to question some things, and to, absolutely want to explore deeper. From there, I realized I had a lot of fear. I was afraid of falling down, breaking my neck. I was very, very new to movement in general, and the whole let's go upside down and breathe there was absolutely terrifying to me. I read, I think it was called The Science of Yoga, in an airport one day, and I don't know if you've read that book, but
I don't know that I have.
It was written by a guy who kind of wrote this sensational article, I think in the New York Times a while ago, just about the dangers of yoga. And
great.
There's a lot of injury stats and whatnot. And so as a person who was very already attuned to being fearful, that set me over the edge, and I took a teacher training. Not because I wanted to be a teacher, but because I was terrified of a spinal cord injury. And wanted to learn how to be safe in this practice. And through that teacher training, I got what I needed, right? I learned how to practice safely, but I also remember distinctly this moment where my teacher, Jen Winan, who I'm eternally grateful for, I was practice teaching, and there were 3 women in Warrior 2. And I was I was confused as to how to progress them. And she's like, Tess, I need you to stop and see people. And I was like, I do see people. I see all these knees that need to go in these directions. And I see these lines that aren't the way these lines should be. And she's like, no, Tess, you need to see people. And I was like, I do see people. Like, there are these shoulders that need to get moved in these directions. She's like, no, Tess, you need to see people. And it broke me. And I remember truly seeing people and allowing myself to be seen for the first time. And that like opened a floodgate of everything I was missing: connection, curiosity, self-awareness. And so from that point, I was hooked on the side of yoga that connects you with community. And I still wasn't sure if I wanted to teach, but I knew that I needed yoga because that was my in with people.
Wow. That's such an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thanks for letting me share it. I think so often we get, I mean, at least coming from my marketing background, we get stuck in this loop of calling our students, calling our audiences. And we forget sometimes that we're just in a room with people. And we're just on the other side of a computer screen or headphones from real people. And it's as simple as that. And it's as complicated as that, right? But it was a message I definitely needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think especially in like the digital age, it's really easy to, I mean, you and I are in different countries, many, many miles apart, and we're on opposite sides of the phone. So it's like, it's really easy to forget that you're like talking to like a physical person that's like a human being that's just the exact same as you, essentially. Obviously, we're all uniquely different, but at the core of it, we're all like just human beings going through our human experience.
Yeah. And at the core of that, like, we all want to be seen. Your students are coming to class, sure, to like open up their heart space and to strengthen their backs. But I would be hard pressed to think of any of my students just wanting that. We want to be seen. We want connection. We want to be known in our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the beautiful things about yoga is I think for a lot of us, my story is relatively similar to yours. It's like we go because we've heard maybe it's good for us, maybe we should move more, maybe we should exercise, that type of thing. And then we discover that there's something a lot more, there's something deeper about, breathing and moving at the same time. And I mean, there's lots of science behind it that can tell you that it's good for you, but I think it's really something that you have to experience for yourself to really, really tune into or to really experience like how powerful it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not a scientist. And like, I think that's the most beautiful thing is that the science of it and the magic of it, and I'll just call it magic, I don't think there's a practice, or I haven't experienced a practice out there where the science and the humanness are so intertwined. And through the exploration of science, and that's kind of where I went next. I attended so many different continuing education courses and trainings, and I really got deep into the rabbit hole because I found that like diving deeper into the science only helped me connect more. And those connections only fueled my curiosity to go into the science. And I think that is one of the coolest things about yoga is we can read and that just makes us more human. And then we can go to these trainings and that just makes us more human. And then like for me, I took it as far as cadaver work and cadaver dissections because the humanity of it and the science of it and that marriage, I mean, that's just so beautiful to me. And I'm a nerd, so I like it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I haven't personally had that experience, but I've heard from other people who have that it's really incredible for learning and connecting a little bit deeper with the body and understanding like the tissues below the skin, which like we can fundamentally understand them when we study them, but I feel like you can't really fully understand them until you've like seen them essentially.
Yeah, I think you can never fully understand them. And that's
pretty true.
I mean, it's like, let's look at the Yoga Sutras and master them, right? It's the same thing. The more you know, the more you don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with that. And so you finished this teacher training, not sure if you wanted to teach. What was it like after having this experience to be going to your full-time, corporate advertising job every single day? Like, obviously stuff had shifted. So what had shifted in terms of like where your career was at?
Well, I needed space to figure that out. I knew that I was curious. I knew that I was missing something, but I didn't necessarily know how it would take shape. So I took a 3-day-a-week advertising job. It's funny how when you make the decision, like, I really want to do something different, opportunities present themselves. So I had the opportunity to go to a 3-day-a-week position that was very similar, that actually paid more, which was awesome. And it gave me the space to figure out what I wanted to do, how I wanted to go about maybe teaching yoga. And when I started teaching privates in my house, started teaching a few classes in my neighborhood, I realized that, yes, I do actually want to teach. It was very much a question until I started actually doing it. And once I started teaching, I loved it. It was very soul satisfying for me. And I feel kind of selfish saying it out loud, but I was really teaching for me because I had never gotten that human connection on that level before. Like, it was a very intimate thing. And I think I was craving that. So I loved the one-on-one because I did get to connect so deeply. However, I was nervous about teaching one-on-one, and the logistics were a little bit harder than teaching group classes. So as my corporate work started to, decrease in scale and my yoga started to increase in scale, I found myself at a couple of gyms. I love teaching gym yoga. I know that's not the typical story, but I loved it, and I love the people, and I love that energy. I'm not a gym person, but I am definitely a gym yoga person. Maybe it's because of how I got started.
Okay, I was going to say, what is it about gym yoga? Yeah, what is it about gym yoga that you like so much? Maybe you can sell some other people on not being against teaching at gyms.
Well, I think it's so I love the drama of it. I love the surprise of it. Nobody goes to a gym thinking they're going to have a profound experience. And when you're able to create a space for them to have a profound experience, like, how cool is it? It's like, surprise, your life got better.
That's very true, actually. Even for myself, like, I like to go to the gym, and I feel like it's a totally different sort of vibe and energy for me than when I go to a yoga studio. Like, going to yoga, yes. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get like really clear on like whatever is going on in my brain today. I go to the gym and I'm like, I'm going to just like do some workouts.
Right. And for me, I had a really difficult and slow time accepting the more spiritual or psychological or emotional components that yoga brought, especially in a studio space. And now it's what I love. Like, send me to kirtan and I'm happy. But initially I was really resistant. I was really hesitant. I grew up in a religious atmosphere that was definitely fear-based. And, I was scared of doing it wrong. I was scared of participating in something that wasn't aligned with my values. I just had a hard time accepting it all. And the gym offered me a space where I could be curious and not resistant. In a yoga studio, there was always that like, well, can I, or should I not? Or there was always that questioning, but there was a little bit more freedom in a gym setting because it wasn't so overtly spiritual in nature.
Yeah, I think that's something that like I've heard from other people. Like if you're kind of uncomfortable with the idea of practicing yoga because you think of it as like a spiritual practice, going to a gym is often where people will go because it's like they feel comfortable there and then they can kind of start to practice. And I love how for you as a teacher, you talk about like, you know, how powerful is it if you can give them a profound experience when they're not expecting it in that setting.
It's really fun. It's so fun. And through that experience, a lot of folks wanted private lessons. And in that gym setting, in order to offer private lessons, I had to become certified as a personal trainer. That was just the way it worked in that particular situation. I don't think it's that way all the time, but for where I was at, they're like, yeah, we want to be able to, you know, let you do that. And so I got a personal training certification, and that allowed me to step into the role of yoga teacher more and more in alignment for what I wanted to do.
Okay, cool. Awesome. And then at some point, did you decide to leave advertising completely, or what did that look like for you?
So I moved from New York to Seattle. And in that experience, I wanted to make a clean break. I was like, cool, fresh city, fresh start. I'm never going back to advertising again. It's yoga and fitness, full-time, full stop. And then, of course, I get to Seattle and Microsoft offers me a job. And I was like, well, okay, I guess I'll go back into advertising. It's never as clean as you expect it to be or want it to be. But very quickly realized that I didn't want to go back. And I tend to learn lessons the hard way twice. The first time has a really big impact, and then I kind of have to like learn it again. And so through that experience, going back into advertising, even though it wasn't what I truly wanted, it was like rocket fuel. It was like, why did I go back? What am I doing? And only gave me more fuel to pursue fitness. It was kind of the, do I want to? Do I not? Do I want to? Do I not? And then it's like, okay, yes, this is what I'm doing. And so in Seattle, I worked for a few different studios, a few different gyms, and it was just doing the gig life like most of us do. Working in group class atmospheres was really challenging, and I learned a ton. And so even though it wasn't what I ultimately knew I wanted to do, like I said, I love the one-on-one connection. I love being in a room with another person every week at the same time, learning the ins and outs of that person and developing that intimate relationship. But you learn a lot in a group class. And so I'm so grateful for those studios and those gyms that allowed me to establish a home base, allowed me to establish myself and my identity of sorts as a yoga teacher. But as with anything that you're doing that isn't fully in alignment with what you want, like it started to wear on me a little bit. It's like, well, in order to teach privates at this yoga studio, I have to reserve it in the times between classes. And that's not really convenient for my people who want to attend at the, prime time 10 a.m. or 5:30 p.m. And so I started renting studio space from a really tiny studio in an office building. I really wanted to be able to have the space to see one-on-one clients when they wanted to show up. So started teaching in that small studio space, and then realized that there was a real market for a non-traditional one-on-one studio, and eventually grew that into having my own space. It was like 200 square feet, so not very big. We fit 4 mats really comfortably, but not any more than that, really. And so I had about 20 clients every week that came to see me at the same time. I was able to develop those consistent relationships. And I had a couple of small groups as well. And it was a mix of yoga and fitness. And eventually, toward the end of that experience, like, it was really hard for me to differentiate between yoga and fitness. And I know that's maybe a little taboo or controversial, but I think that when you apply the practices of yoga to any shapes or positions you make with your body, you can have those profound, mindful, meditative experiences. And so I feel really lucky to have gotten into a space where I could own my own studio and have it be exactly what I wanted it to be. A lot of people were like, when are you going to hire another yoga instructor? When are you going to move into a bigger space? And it's like, this is it. This is what I wanted to create. Even though it was very non-traditional.
Yeah. I really love the idea of like creating something and then just being okay with where it's at. This is something that I personally struggle with. And I think in general in society, we're always kind of like, what's the next thing we're doing? Or like, how can you grow it? Or blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. And I think that it's really cool to hear about like, this was my goal. This is what I wanted to achieve. And this is what I'm doing. And I'm like, this is everything that I've wanted type thing, as opposed to being like, getting a bigger space and opening a bigger studio and hiring more teachers and maybe opening a second location, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I'm sure that's all stuff that you could have done if you wanted to, but I love that you chose to keep it small and right in line with that original vision that you had.
Yeah. And like, don't get me wrong. There were definitely times I was like, I could totally franchise this. I could teach teacher trainings so that other people know how to do this. But ultimately, like, I had to look at what rang true for me. And from the very beginning, from that first moment where my teacher told, like, Tess, you need to see people. And like, I shifted into wanting to see people. I'm like, what's the most conducive environment for me to accomplish this goal? And being an introvert, being more comfortable in one-on-one spaces, if I went larger, it wouldn't satisfy my desires and my goals, and it wouldn't be the thing that I wanted to create, despite that like drive and external pressure to grow. So yeah, I think if any of your listeners are like struggling, like, I want to open a studio, but like, I don't know if I want to go big, or like, that seems overwhelming, I would highly encourage you to look at, like, what do I actually want? What do I want to do with my time? How do I want to be spending, my waking hours in my business? Like, how do I want to be spending it? And then create the thing that you need to sustain that vision, that desire. And it can look a million different ways, right? We have the traditional studio model for sure. And that's awesome. I love me a good yoga studio. Thank you to all the studio owners who are doing it the traditional way, because there's value there. But I think oftentimes we see what's around us and we think that we have to create that thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. We get kind of, we think of an idea and then maybe it is different from what other people are doing. And then I think it's really easy to get caught up in those external influences of like, somebody's doing this and it's clearly working, so I should do that too. I mean, I feel like we see it very clearly with like, even like pricing models. Like, you look at, say the pricing models for 3 different yoga studios, and it's likely that they have similar schedules, similar classes, similar pricing models. And I'm like, why is like nobody like just trying to do something a little bit different? And that's, I mean, that's a very blanket statement. Like it's not completely fair because lots of yoga studios are doing really unique, cool stuff and have great teachers, great classes, not hating on yoga studios. But I think that in general, it's like if you pull up, classes or studio schedules or information in an area, you'll find that there's a lot of similarities. If that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. And I think this is a good segue into I have a huge passion for teaching yoga teachers especially, but really small business owners, how to think about what you want to create and then retroactively building it. If I were to charge $22 an hour for my services, there's no way I could sustain my studio. Mm-hmm. So what I had to do was, okay, so I have this space. Because it's small, my rent was pretty affordable. Like I didn't have to sign a commercial lease. I was able to sign a more traditional lease, like what you would expect if you signed a lease at an apartment, for example. It was very similar in this multi-use office building. And so I knew that I had to pay rent. And I knew that I personally had the capacity, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, to teach about 20 people every week. And I knew that in order for me to be effective, I needed to teach the same people every week. Like I didn't want to have a revolving door of clients. Yes, if you came to me for a specific purpose, I wanted to get you to that goal as soon as possible and get you out the door. But ultimately, I wanted to build relationships. So if I have 20 people coming to me every week and they're on an auto pay subscription, how much do I need to make per month to meet my commercial rent and to pay myself a salary that gives me a lifestyle I want? And in some respects, what I was charging was very expensive. And in some respects, what I was charging was, a no-brainer. It was like a steal. And I think it's important to look at, like, what do I want as a yoga teacher? What's going to sustain me financially as I open this studio or whatever it is you want to create in your business? You want to create a course or you want to create some other kind of offering. What do you need to sustain you? And then base your pricing model off of that. Like if you ask yourself, what's going to make me the most generous version of myself? And what do I need to be able to do that? It makes a big difference rather than saying like, okay, my market demands this price. I want to be at the upper end, but not too high. So if most people are charging like $15 to $22, I'm going to set my prices at $20. Is that going to sustain you? Is that not going to sustain you? Are you going to be able to feel generous? Are you not? It just leaves more questions than answers for me. So I would prefer to take a more internal approach.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touched on a lot of important stuff there. But what I really love is like, am I going to feel like I can give well with this? Because I think that our prices always have to be that balance of like, something that feels like good to receive, but also feels like in line with what you can deliver. And I think that that's often something that we're not doing. I think in a lot of industries, to be quite honest, but definitely in the yoga industry. I mean, you're often just like, exactly like you said, looking at what other people are offering and, okay, people are offering, $20 to $25. I'll offer 22. That's right in line with that. And I think that that's like, it's not to any fault of anyone. Like that's kind of how we're taught to deal with pricing and setting prices. But I do think there also has to be for sure that internal component of like, do I feel excited about delivering at this price? And if the honest answer is no, then your price is too low for sure.
Yeah. And if charging on the really upper end gives you anxiety and you show up anxious, that's not going to work either. Mm-hmm. So like finding that like spot where you feel like, ooh, I can sit with this. Like, I feel good about this. Like, on either end, I think is really, it can be liberating. At least it was for me, because then I didn't have to think about pricing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
I
set
love
it
that.
and like feel good.
Yeah. Which is like how we should feel. But I think it is actually really uncommon to like state a price or set a price or put it out there and then like feel good about it. Like, I think that it's so easy to just like come back to it again and overthink it and doubt it and wonder if anyone's going to pay it and all those normal human thoughts. So I feel like it's like the idea of just being so clear internally that that's what you want to offer, and then just like sitting with it and being okay with it is super important and so hard.
And so hard. Like, it comes out of my mouth, but like the process was really a lot longer and more unsettling than I probably made it out to be.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that as well. Hey yogis, we're just taking a quick little break from the podcast to talk about PunchPass. Are you looking for inspiration as we begin the new year? Today, I want to tell you why studios around the world love PunchPass studio management software. Charlotte has found that selling her passes online through PunchPass has helped her cash flow endlessly. And online pre-registration has meant that she always knows how many clients will show up for class. Dan says simply that PunchPass is just so easy for people, and it makes him and his business look incredibly professional. Marquita says that the team at PunchPass was attentive to her, which she really appreciated. She says that if she had a question, it was going to get answered. Laura introduced PunchPass's memberships so she can automatically collect payment from her clients. She has been amazed at how much energy, excitement, and growth her business has experienced as a result. Amanda was totally overwhelmed with the other software that she was using. She needed something more simple, and she could see that PunchPass seemed to get it. She found it quick and easy to move from one software into another, into PunchPass, and she loves how PunchPass provides her with usable information at her fingertips. Head on over to punchpass.com/MBOM to read more stories about people who have transformed their businesses with PunchPass. And you are invited to try PunchPass for free for 2 weeks and see for yourself how it might work for you. Once again, it's punchpass.com/MBOM. Okay, back to the episode. And so where is your studio at today? Are you still running your studio?
I am not. When I moved from Seattle to Bend about 5 months ago, I had to close it. And it was probably the most heartbreaking thing I have ever done in my entire life. I moved to Bend because I wanted to be out of the city, one, and because I wanted to start a new chapter with my partner, which is awesome. But in closing down the space, I mean, I unraveled a little bit. When you build a thing and you create relationships, it was like saying goodbye to 20 of my best friends. And it was really tough. And I still struggle with how to be a yoga teacher here, how to interact with my community. To make the move easy on myself, I got a marketing job. And while I'm so grateful to be in the marketing space and have a consistent paycheck, and like, it could not have been an easier transition logistically and financially. I really do want to, I miss teaching. I want to teach. I want to be in physical spaces with my community. I want to have intimate relationships with the people around me. So I'm still figuring that out in this new location. And I'm excited at the thought of maybe in a year or two opening a movement collective or a yoga collective.
Awesome.
Having different perspectives and different types of teachers in a space is exciting to me. So I'm letting that percolate. I don't know what the 2.0 version will be. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I think that's great. I mean, I think that as humans, there's like, we kind of touched on this already, or I guess I brought it up. Like, there's kind of this always like, okay, so I'm like making a shift and, what's next? What am I going to do? And I was actually talking with a friend about this. Like, she's like, oh, I'm not like telling people in my family that I've like left this job because I don't want them to like ask me, you know, what's next and how I'm going to make money. And I was like, you know, you don't have to answer those types of questions. Like you don't owe people an answer to like what's next. Like it's okay to be in a little bit of limbo. Like I'm not really sure what's next, and I'm just taking time to consider what my next move is going to be, because I think that we can make really like rash decisions and jump into things. Like, I mean, you could have probably already opened up like a small studio and that sort of thing. And maybe that would be something that fulfills you. Maybe it doesn't. But I think it's so important with a big change like that to take time to like really decide what your next move is and what's going to feel best for you and for the people that you want to serve.
Thank you for sharing that.
No worries. I'm sure it's like been an internal battle for you as well.
Thank you.
No worries. Happy to put that out there. And I mean, it comes from a place of like, I've been in that situation too, where it doesn't feel easy in the moment. Like it's so much easier for me to say it than it is to actually act on it. So that's important to know too.
And in that space, in that limbo, I've been able to work on other projects that have been calling to me and have been on the back burner. When you own a studio, go figure, you don't have a lot of time for other projects. So it has opened up space for other things to come about. But yeah, being in limbo it's a tough one that doesn't get a lot of airtime. So
yeah, absolutely. It's a tricky space. It was actually, I did my 300-hour teacher training. I finished up this past spring, and for our final practicums, one of the girls taught a really beautiful practice where the theme was on like the liminal space, and everything was about like the pauses in between the poses. So we always have the like breath work within the poses and getting into the poses. And her entire theme was like being comfortable within the parts in between the poses, which was definitely like challenged me like both physically and mentally. But I was like, this is like such a beautiful parallel for the practices that so many of us need to get comfortable with off the mat, because it is like you go through a job transition and there's this immediate like, oh, well, I need to like get that next job, or I need to do this next thing. And I think sometimes it's okay to just be.
Yeah, I just got chills. I think that'll be my intention tomorrow when I go to yoga, being okay with the spaces. That's cool.
Well, shout out to Chelsea from my yoga teacher training, because she taught
Chelsea.
a beautiful practice on that. I have no idea if she's listening or not, but thanks, Chelsea. It was
That's
definitely,
lovely.
yeah, it's something that I struggle with. So I don't know that I could teach that as nearly as well as she did. So something that I'm curious about is, I know that you're running something called the Heart Driven Business Academy. I'm curious if you could tell me a little bit more about that. When did you decide to create that? And where did the inspiration for this project come from?
So the Heart Driven Business Academy was born out of a lot of frustration and a lot of anger. I wish I could say that there was a more pure intention, but as I was developing my studio, as I was growing and really reaching my capacity pretty quickly, I realized that a lot of people in the small business community, because when you start a small business, you tend to like run in those circles. A lot of my friends were struggling with legal stuff. They didn't have a contract for their lease that they were happy with, or they were having issues selling, feeling kind of gross or icky about that, or they didn't have a really solid financial plan. So they were in this cycle of, they got money and then they spent money and then they got money and then they spent money, and they weren't really sure how to reinvest that money or grow their business. Coming from the marketing world, I had access to a legal team, strategy, financial team. I knew what the goals for my projects were. I knew how many people needed to purchase the thing, and then I could retroactively create a marketing strategy to make that happen. And I took a lot of those skills for granted when I opened my studio. I knew how to think that way. And a lot of my friends didn't. And that really pissed me off. I think that the people doing the most good in the world oftentimes are the people with very little resources, very little access. Corporate, at least in America, like the corporate world has so many resources. They're able to get really high talent. And it just drove me crazy seeing my friends struggle with this. And for me too, like I didn't know that it's actually really easy to go see a lawyer to develop your like membership agreement. Like there are lawyers who totally look over contracts and they're like, yeah, you're good to go. Or I would tweak this thing here. Oh, your waiver looks good, but you could totally make that more conversational. And so I realized that like we have a lot of like online marketing gurus out there, and they're all like oversimplifying really complex problems. Running a yoga studio is like, despite what anybody tells you, it's not as simple as, well, you just need to grow your email list. Like if you believe that, like you might be in for a little bit of struggle, or you really just need to find a good CPA and you'll be fine. Well, it's like, well, where do I find a good CPA? What is a good CPA? How do I know if it's the right CPA for me? And so I really sat with that problem. I'm like, okay, aside from maybe the Small Business Administration and SCORE, there isn't a comprehensive overview of what it means to think like a business owner, what it means to take your subject matter expertise and create a business out of it. And so I started dabbling in creating courses because, you know, I'm a marketer and I'm a creative person and I love having projects. And I realized very quickly into this creation process that this wasn't something that I could teach. It's the reason I got frustrated that like people tried to teach these very simple solutions. I can only present one facet of it. And so because I'm a person who likes collaboration, like for example, when I owned my studio, my greatest source of referrals were doctors and physical therapists and chiropractors. I love collaborating with people who are smarter than me. And I'm really good at it. I'm really good at like reaching out to the people who know way more than I do so that I can provide really good services to my clients. And so I kind of took the same model that I used in my studio space and applied this to online business. So I reached out to a bunch of different small business lawyers, a bunch of different CPAs, marketing people, salespeople, coaches, and asked them to contribute their knowledge to a comprehensive educational platform. And that's what we created. It's based on 5 systems that I think every business owner needs to know. And that is money, legal, sales, marketing, and road mapping or like strategic planning. And cool. Yeah, we're all really good at 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of those, right? We all have our strengths. Some people are like really great at marketing, but maybe don't have the sales system to back it up. Or maybe you're really good at finances, but you're not sure how to legally protect your intellectual property or whatnot. And so the Heart Driven Business Academy is there to help show you how to think systematically about those 5 areas. And I do it because I think it's important, because I believe that like yoga teachers, especially, and that's just personal bias on my end, like you're doing really, really, really good work. And I want you to have more energy to devote to the good work and have a business foundation that allows you to feel free and feel supported and feel abundant. and not like stressed about like, well, is my waiver good enough? And like, maybe I should adjust my pricing model. Like, go teach the yoga.
Yeah, I can absolutely relate to that as well. I think that some of us, like you and I, are kind of a little bit nerdy about things like this. And thankfully, there's a lot more than just you and I out there too to help yoga teachers. But, and I mean, for me, I love teaching yoga as well, but I think my brain thinks about the business side of things as well. So it's like a very natural blend. But I think it's like allow people to help you with the things that you're not good at is so important.
Right. And that we're not trained in. Like, I think oftentimes, at least for me, so I'll just speak for me, there was confusion, at least initially, over my scope. Like, what am I as a yoga teacher actually teaching? Like, it is very physical. Like, you have people coming to you that like, well, I have this injury or that injury. And as a yoga teacher, I'm also a business owner. Like, what does it mean to be a yoga teacher, right? And very quickly identifying what I feel capable of and what I truly have to give versus what is outside of me and outside of my scope, and where can my students be served better. And applying that same kind of mentality to business, like, we're yoga teachers, we're not lawyers. Like, we might be really good at budgeting, but like, we're also not CPAs or tax experts. And I tried for so long to like save a penny here or to like cut a corner here. And like, well, maybe it's not like that risky to download a waiver I found on the internet. But like, the truth of the matter is, like, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a tax expert. I was good at marketing, but I was not as good at sales. And so applying awareness to where you're truly not an expert. And it's not even like, yes, it's asking for help for sure at the things that you're not good at it, but it's also just recognizing your limits. And it can be like this huge relief of like, oh, it was never for me to own that. Like, that was never supposed to be mine to figure out. Like, we're a community. Like, we as humans aren't meant to create these things that we're creating by ourselves. And a lot of things that we take on aren't ours to take on. There are people whose gift it is to do that thing. And so, just as much as I hate the word allow, like, allowing that flow can be powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And I think that, those are really, really great points. It's interesting because I have a course and some people I've had some beta testers go through when I first launched it. And the biggest thing that people asked for was like, oh, something on like taxes would be really helpful. And for me, I'm like, I am like, the business of yoga is like a lot of different components, and the components I touch on are not the tax side of things, because one, that's so challenging country to country because it's so different, but also like, I barely got through accounting classes in my business degree. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm an expert on that sort of stuff, because I am not going to be doing you or your business any justice or any help.
Yeah. And I struggled with the same thing for sure on the like first few renditions of this platform.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super hard. It's actually kind of funny. When I went into my business degree, I set my major as general because I didn't know what I wanted to major in. But when people would ask, I was like, oh, maybe like accounting, like maybe I'll be an accountant. And I mean, I was like 18 years old at the time. No 18-year-old knows what they want to do with their lives. But it's kind of funny because then my first year was really general courses. And then my second year, we got into more specific business courses. And I like had to take my first accounting class twice because I did so badly in it.
That's so funny.
I was like, okay, well, I guess that's not my major then.
And what a lesson. Like, man, I'm sure very humbling, but
Yeah, I mean,
At
that
least
doesn't
you
like
know.
feel good. Like 19-year-old me was like pretty like
Oh.
distraught about it at the time because I'd never done so poorly in a class before. But like the reality is that it was also like a really good lesson to learn at 19 years old, where it's like, I was like, okay, I'm not going to force something that's clearly not working. Like, this is not my path. I'm just going to go a different direction. And I ended up majoring in marketing because it's more creative. And I mean, that's gotten to me to where I am today. So everything works out.
That's really neat. I didn't realize that you had the accounting as the first desire or first major.
I think it was honestly like not a like heart driven or like well thought out desire. I think it was like, oh, I've heard that like accountants make a lot of money and that's like a really solid career, because at that point I was very much like on like the straight and narrow, like went from high school to university, was getting a business degree. I was like, yeah, like that'll be like a good career for me. I can work that and then get my pension and
And
like,
retire happily.
yeah, exactly. Like that'll be great. And then I was like, oh no, that is definitely not what I'm going to do with my life.
That is so funny.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm glad that you are here doing this because this is so valuable. So thank you for not being great at accounting at first.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I'm grateful that I'm here as well and that I'm not in an accounting job, because I don't think I'd be very happy. I love what you're doing with your platform. I'm curious, if people want to like be a part of it or take a course, how does it sort of work? Like, can they take courses individually based on what they need? Do they take all the courses? What's sort of like it look like when somebody goes there to sign up?
So it was really important for me that people were able to jump in where they needed help. So our 5 courses, again, money, legal, sales, marketing, and road mapping, um, they're designed to work together and they all feed into each other. But if you need specific help with legal, for example, if you're like, I'm just not sure, like, what is intellectual property? What should I trademark? Do I need to copyright things? What entity is right for me? How do I protect myself and minimize risk when I do my marketing? You're able to jump into that class and get just what you need. And it's really affordable. They're under $200 and they're designed to just like be bingeable. It was really important to me not to have like a course that you need to like set aside an entire month and like really, it's not this long, arduous process. Every course is designed to be done in about a week, and you're able to dive into the things you need. If you realize through taking that course, you're like, oh, okay, now that I understand legal, maybe I need more help in the money side of things. Great, take the money course too. And if you're like, I just want to get my business set up and like, I do want to really do that deep dive, they'll all work together.
Awesome. That's really cool. And so obviously we'll put a link for that in the show notes and I want people to go check that out. But I'm curious, from creating this platform and just from everything that you've learned running a yoga studio, being a yoga teacher, working in marketing for so many years, what are some of like the key things that a yoga entrepreneur needs to know when it comes to like setting up and starting their business?
The first thing, and it's the biggest thing I learned, CPAs and small business lawyers are not scary. They're probably not as expensive as you think they're going to be. And having those 2 people on your team is invaluable. Just full stop. Like every business owner needs a lawyer and a CPA, at least to get started. And I wish I knew that initially, because I would have saved myself a lot of headache. I would have saved a lot of time in going back and forth. And I would have saved myself a lot of like worry. Like I did download a waiver off the internet at first. And every time I had somebody sign that waiver, I was nervous about it. And I wish I had just gotten that off my plate. I wish I could have like showed up and like handed over this waiver like, hey, I feel really good about this document. Like let's go do some yoga. But instead I brought like an energy of worry. And I wish I had known that it was really easy. It was really simple. Like lawyers are really nice people sometimes, oftentimes. And then,
I mean, they want to help you, right? They're like kind of like
help.
us being dorky about like business of yoga. They're like dorky and legal stuff, which is like not where I dork out at all. Like I'm the same as you. I'm super stressed. Like, did I cover everything I need to do? Like, does my insurance cover this? Like, have I written everything so my insurance covers it? There's just so much confusion. So I love the idea of like hiring somebody who like geeks out on that type of thing.
Right. Like they're really cool people. So I wish I wasn't so scared of talking to professionals. And then also, I wish that I knew on a more visceral level that like doing a non-traditional thing is okay. I wish and it all comes down to fear for me, but I wish I was less fearful about creating something that was a little against the grain, a little bit not the norm. I wish I just had a more solid footing in my own vision. And so I would encourage any business owner, if you're creating something that may or may not be a good idea, right? You don't have like a billion models to base your decision off of. If you're creating something a little bit different, crunch the numbers, like build your systems, but like let yourself be a little wild. Let yourself run a little bit freer. Chances are, like, if you have a few systems in place and they're all telling you it's a green light, run with it, trust it, fly by the seat of your pants, knowing that like, okay, you've done the work, the numbers work out, you're going to be fine. You don't have to create the thing that everybody's creating for it to really, really work and really be fulfilling.
Yeah, that's such an important reminder for people and just such an important learning lesson as well. So yeah, thank you for sharing that one.
Yeah, thank you for letting me share it. I really wish I knew those things sooner.
Amazing. I have loved this conversation. I could keep you on this call all day and create like a 7-hour podcast interview with you. It's just been so fun.
Like we could, if we let the lid off of Pandora's box, just interpersonally, we could probably nerd out for many hours.
Yes, I'm pretty confident that is true. But I do want to be mindful of your time. I'm sure you have other things to do with your day. So final question, where can people go to find out more about you and your business?
It's heartdrivenbusinessacademy.com or Heart Driven Business Academy on Instagram. And then if your users want something like more yoga specific, we have a systems thinking toolkit. So it gives you like that high level 1,000-foot view of your business systems. I've adapted that for yoga teachers. So if you want to go to heartdrivenbusinessacademy.com/MBOM, I'll put that as a freebie for this podcast and for your audience.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tess. That's amazing. I'll make sure there's a link for that, of course, in the show notes. And thank you so much for your time today. This has been so great.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to participate in the conversation in addition to listening. Thank you for all the work you're doing for all of us in the business of yoga.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, there's the episode with Tess Ball from the Heart Driven Business Academy. Make sure you guys go and check that out. Check out the resources there. And as always, you can find notes from the episode over on the show notes page at mbomyoga.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I'd love to have you following along to get all the latest updates from the podcast. Now, before we end this episode of the podcast, I have a tiny little request from you. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love it if you could rate and review the show. It's super helpful for other yoga teachers like yourself to be able to discover the podcast and just know what you think about it. So if you could find the little icon that has the option to select 5 stars, hit your rating there, and then leave your review, that would be super, super appreciated. All right, that's all for me today. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for being a part of this community. I'll see you next week. Namaste.